Hello, and welcome to Space Exploration News Update, where we bring you the latest and greatest stories from the final frontier. I'm your host, Carlos Munoz-Camp, and today we have 5 stories that happened in this past week. First of all, we have kind of a sad story here with Japan's H-3 rockets that exploded after launch failure. On Tuesday, Japan's space program hit a major road bump when its new H-3 rocket failed to ignite one of its boosters and exploded in midair. The rocket was carrying a $1.47 billion satellite that was supposed to monitor greenhouse gases and climate change. The live stream had to be briefly halted, and everything was going well, and then all of a sudden, the live stream was halted, and then they let everyone know that they had to self-destruct the rocket. Unfortunately, no one was harmed, but it is a setback to the Japanese team. Our hearts go out to them. It's just simply a very difficult industry to be a part of. And yeah, it's a major setback, unfortunately. On better news, SpaceX launched 4 astronauts to the International Space Station. They, using a Falcon 9 rocket carrying 4 astronauts from NASA, ESA, and JAXA to work on International Space Station on March 2nd. The mission, called Crew-2, is part of NASA's Commercial Crew program that aims to provide safe and reliable transportation to low Earth orbit. So anyways, here's the picture of these folks, and I'm glad that it all went well, and it's a continuing program that is working pretty well, getting folks up to the International Space Station. More on the International Space Station a little bit later. So here's an interesting piece of news. This is a company I hadn't really heard about yet, Relativity Space. They aborted their first flight of the 3D printed rocket. How cool is that? So they're working with this 3D printing technology. The space startup Relativity Space called off their first ever flight of its new 3D printed rocket on Wednesday after last-minute abort and temperature issues during the countdown. The rocket, named Terran 1, is designed to launch small satellites into orbit using mostly 3D printed parts. So these folks, they were describing the launch there, and they had to call off, but they seem really, really friendly. I'm really excited to see what they come up with next. So I'm going to stay tuned on this Relativity company. So hopefully I can write an article about them for you guys, or maybe a video or something. Okay, moving on. This is more of a science related one, but it was interesting that these German researchers started investigating how human immune cells behave under different levels of gravity using parabolic flights and centrifuges. The results showed that some immune cells were more active while others were less active under altered gravity conditions. So it sounds like it's a little bit of a wash. They had some warnings for space tourism. Altered gravity, or the constant lack of gravity, is one of several changes in the environment faced by these space travelers. The human body has evolved under the conditions of Earth's gravity, and is not adapted to the absence of attractive force. In space travel, other factors such as ionization, radiation is a big one, constant noise, isolation, confinement, and a total distortion of circadian rhythms, so that's the rhythms of like waking up and sleeping, a short exposure to extreme temperatures during the return to atmosphere have to be considered, the expert warns. They're able to describe some of these potential effects. So it's something that we don't want to glaze over, right? We need to understand, what are the risks that one is entering when they're doing any kind of space tourism or anything like that. Are there risks worth taking, right? Like one thing that I talk to my girlfriend frequently about is like, if they had a mission to just go and fly around the moon, right? And it was $10,000 to just go and fly around the moon. Would I take that? Would I want to go? I think the answer is yes, but studies like this German study are important for us to know, like, okay, like what are the risks? Could there be any long-term side effects? Of course, the International Space Station is also very useful for that, because we have people that live there for 4 or 5 months, and maybe even more. I'm not sure. It's important to see how our bodies work under those conditions, and that brings us to our last point, and I promised more about the ISS, which we'll discuss here. So the big picture here is that Biden proposed a 7% increase in NASA's budget for 2024, which I'm so excited about. I hope that can go through. The majority of the funds would go to the Artemis program, and please check out our articles about Artemis. We're going to keep updating that. It's a pretty exciting mission to the moon. In 2026, they want to send humans to the moon, and eventually they have plans of establishing a sustainable presence there. One of the real big selling points of having a base on the moon is that the gravity is so low, it's really easy to launch rockets, at least from a energy expenditure perspective, because you need to use a fraction of the energy to launch a rocket from the moon than you do from Earth. The budget request also includes money for other space exploration initiatives, such as returning samples from Mars and developing new technologies from future missions. Another interesting thing, we can also see this here in this article. I do want to show articles that corroborate what I'm saying, so you know that I'm not just making stuff up. But yeah, the request also adds 180 million, so NASA can begin developing a space tug to help deorbit the International Space Station when it is expected to retire in 2030. I didn't know the International Space Station was scheduled to retire that soon, so that's interesting. And I'm really curious to see what they're gonna do with it, right? Are they gonna send it off orbit, as in like fly it towards the sun, or are they gonna try to land it back on Earth? That's really interesting to see what they're going to do there. And of course, it's also interesting to see, are they going to be able to pass this budget? The current proposal, the idea is that they would expire the Trump era tax cuts. And some of those, let's be honest, were really geared towards like very rich people that don't necessarily need that money, I don't think, I think that money is much better spent with space exploration, which helps all of us, all of humanity, for posterity. So anyways, that's my hope, is that they can get that through. And that was your update for week 10 there. I'm using a very simple format for these. Let me know what you think. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. I'm trying to make these easy for me to make, to be honest, and easy for you to follow along. And you can just go on week 10, 2023 update, and you can see the information there. I really am curious what you guys think, and how I can make this more interesting for you. But I have to be honest, I want to keep it simple. I want it to be something that I can do on my weekends and not take too much of my weekends preparing these. So I hope this was interesting for you, and I look forward to more. All right, thank you so much.